All right, welcome to week 6. So this week is intense, but please do the work yourselves. Some of you are still using AI, and I see it. Sometimes you don't get it all deleted. So please stop doing that, because what is the point of taking this class? The point of taking this class is so that you gain knowledge, and so you gain the skills to know where to find knowledge. And if the only skill you have is to plug something into AI, you don't really have a skill and you don't really have knowledge. And you're boring. You're just like everybody else. So give yourself a chance to be the wonderful, unique person that you are and do your own work. Okay, so this week you're going to read chapter 4, Civil Liberties, and chapter 5, Civil Rights. And then I have several things linked in the assignment. You can see from the points that this assignment is worth, that it's big, it's weighty, and you need to do it. Okay, so you are going through the Constitution. There are 7 articles in the Constitution. Article 3 gives power to the judiciary. And that is largely why we're doing the first part of this assignment, is so you really understand how that federal judiciary works. You're looking at a case from 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson. And that's where we see Homer Plessy, a gentleman of mixed race descent, boarding a Louisiana rail car and sitting in the whites only section. He was arrested. A court case ensued, went all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court perverts the heck out of the 14th Amendment and creates the separate but equal doctrine codifying segregation and public accommodations nationwide. There's one heroic dissenting justice on that court, John Marshall Harlan. He said, no, this is wrong. He specifically said, our Constitution is colorblind, and it is fabulous. His dissent is fabulous. So then, but he was the only one. And the court, the rest of the court voted for separate but equal. That became the law. And so what was the purpose of Justice Harlan standing on his own? The purpose was Justice Harlan and his brave dissent gave the court in Brown versus Board of Education in 1952 some legs to stand on. And that is where we see the reversal of public segregation formally through the Supreme Court, where they declare that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. All right, then you're looking at one of my favorite episodes from the Civil Rights Movement, the Greensboro sit-in. So there were students in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they wanted to go and have lunch at the F.W. Woolworth store, and they wanted to be served at the lunch counter. This is not unreasonable. However, they were denied service. So they returned the next day, and they had some more students with them, and they were denied service, and they would stay until the store closed. And so the city of Greensboro responded with more strict segregation policies. But still, these students and eventually hundreds of others go to this store every day and sit at the lunch counter wanting to be served. I'm trying not to sneeze. Oh boy. And so then 6 months later, they were served at that lunch counter. And so I think what that shows us is the power of standing for your beliefs. Just like Justice Harlan, the dissenter in the Plessy versus Ferguson case, he stood for his beliefs, even though he stood alone. And those North Carolina students, when they first went, they were a very small group, but they still went. The bravery it took, and also the self-restraint and self-control, self-discipline to be peaceful. They were respectful. They were peaceful. They were not violent. They were not foul. They were not accusatory. They simply asked to be served lunch at the lunch counter. And 6 months after that initial request, they were served. And so it's just a beautiful example of standing for what is right and standing for your rights in a respectful, peaceful, beautiful way. Then we're going to look at a marriage. So John Adams was our second president under the Constitution. And he was a great statesman. He has books. It's a several volume series, Thoughts on Government. He was able to study. He was able to travel between here and Europe. He was a great statesman. We owe him a debt of gratitude for much of what our country became at the beginning. the good stuff. So, but he was able to do that because he had a very brilliant, hardworking wife at home taking care of everything while he's gallivanting around being a statesman. So she writes him a letter. They actually are famous for their letters that they wrote to each other. But on March 31st of 1776, so as we know, it's before July 4th. We have not yet declared independence, but she knew they were going to, and she asked him, when you make the new code of laws, which you're going to need when you become a new country, please remember the ladies. He did not. Anybody who's married understands this dynamic. However, so that's 1776. We don't see the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote until 1920. So there's a lot in this, but it is important, and it's important to you. You do the work. No AI. You guys do this. All right. Reach out with questions and have a great week.